On a quiet afternoon in Texas, a police officer pulls over two young black men driving a luxury car. Convinced they don't belong, he refuses to listen, cuffs them, and prepares to take them in. But what he doesn't know is that in just a few minutes, his entire world will come crashing down. When the truth is revealed and he finds out who they really are, he's left begging for mercy. But will it be too late? Will justice be served? Or will power protect the guilty once again? What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support more powerful stories like this. Alarm fire. The Texas sun hung high in the sky, radiating an oppressive heat over the quiet suburban streets. On the road leading to Hillcrest Academy, an elite private school for the wealthy, a black BMW rolled smoothly toward the front gates, its engine humming softly before coming to a stop. Jamal and Jordan Carter, 17-year-old twin brothers, stepped out, ready for another day of classes. Just as they shut the car doors, red and blue lights flashed, followed by the sharp wail of a siren. A police cruiser pulled up aggressively behind them, and a middle-aged man in a Navy uniform stepped out. Officer Daniel "Dan" Riggs. "Freeze right there," Riggs barked, one hand resting on his belt near his holstered gun. Jamal and Jordan exchanged a confused glance, but remained calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" Jordan asked, keeping his voice steady. Riggs stepped forward, his sharp gaze sweeping over the two teenagers with blatant suspicion. "Whose car is this?" he demanded coldly. "It belongs to our dad. He's—" "Don't lie to me," Riggs interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension. "Two black kids driving a BMW. You really think I'm stupid?" Jamal clenched his fist for a split second before forcing himself to relax. "We can grab the registration from the glove compartment." "Not necessary. Step out of the vehicle, now." The twins exchanged another glance, realizing that this was not going to end well. Jamal and Jordan hesitated for a moment, their minds racing. They had always been taught to comply with the police, but something about Officer Riggs' tone and body language told them that no matter what they did, this situation would not end fairly. Slowly, they stepped out of the BMW, keeping their hands visible. "Turn around and put your hands where I can see them," Riggs ordered, reaching for his handcuffs. "Officer, we haven't done anything wrong," Jordan tried to reason, his voice calm but firm. "You're resisting now," Riggs sneered, stepping closer. "Let me guess, you boys got this car off some chop shop, huh?" Jamal's patience cracked for a moment. "Seriously? We already told you this is our dad's car." Riggs smirked, clearly enjoying himself. "Yeah? And I'm the mayor of Texas," he shot back. Before either twin could react, Riggs grabbed Jordan's wrist and twisted it behind his back, slapping a handcuff on him. "You have no right," Jamal protested, stepping toward his brother. "Step back," Riggs barked, pointing a finger at him. "Or you're next." Jamal's heart pounded in his chest as he watched his brother get handcuffed like a criminal. Jordan, jaw clenched, kept his mouth shut, knowing any sudden movement could escalate things. "Officer," he thought. Jamal tried again, forcing himself to stay calm. "If you call our dad, he'll clear this up in 2 seconds." Riggs scoffed. "Yeah, sure. What's he gonna say? That you kids are innocent little angels? That you belong at some rich private school?" "Yes," Jordan snapped, his patience finally gone. "Because we do." Riggs tightened his grip on Jordan's shoulder, forcing him toward the squad car. "You're coming downtown. Both of you." Jamal's blood ran cold. "For what?" "Failure to comply with a law enforcement officer," Riggs said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And I've got a feeling we'll find something interesting once we search the vehicle. That was the moment Jamal knew this wasn't about the law. It was about power. As Riggs shoved Jordan toward the police cruiser, Jamal felt a chill crawl down his spine. A black SUV was parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing whoever was inside. Riggs was too busy to notice, but Jamal caught the slightest glint of a camera lens peeking out. Someone was watching, recording. Riggs shoved Jordan into the back seat, then turned to Jamal. "Don't worry, you're next," he said with a grin, reaching for another pair of handcuffs. Before he could clamp them onto Jamal's wrists, his radio crackled. "Officer Riggs, report your status," came the voice of his captain. Riggs sighed, pressing the radio to his mouth. "Yeah, Captain. Just bringing in 2 suspects from Hillcrest." Silence. Then a voice like thunder. "Riggs, do you have any idea who you just arrested?" Riggs frowned. "Yeah, a couple of punks stealing a car." Another long silence. Then, "Riggs, you just put District Attorney Elijah Carter's sons in handcuffs." The color drained from Riggs' face. His grip on the cuffs slackened. Jamal and Jordan, still in the back of the cruiser, exchanged a knowing glance. Now the real fun was about to begin. Riggs' fingers trembled as the words echoed in his ear. "You just put District Attorney Elijah Carter's sons in handcuffs." A wave of panic surged through his body. He had profiled plenty of black teenagers before, thrown his weight around without consequence. But this was different. This was career-ending. "Captain, I didn't know," Riggs stammered into his radio. "You didn't bother to check their IDs?" The captain's voice roared through the speaker. "You have 60 seconds to uncuff them and apologize before you ruin your entire damn career." Riggs turned back to the police cruiser, sweat beading on his forehead. Inside, Jamal and Jordan sat motionless, their faces unreadable. The black SUV was still there, parked across the street like a shadow. The back door opened, and Elijah Carter himself stepped out. The district attorney of the county. The man who could end Riggs' career with a single phone call. Elijah's suit was crisp, his face stone cold. He didn't need to say a word. He simply stood there, his arms crossed, watching. Riggs swallowed hard and fumbled with his keys. His hands shook as he unlocked the cuffs around Jordan's wrists. "You're free to go," he muttered, avoiding their eyes. Jordan rubbed his wrists, stepping away from the cruiser. Jamal stayed where he was, his gaze piercing. "That's it," Jamal said. His voice was calm, but the weight behind his words was undeniable. "No apology, no explanation. Look, kid, Riggs started, but his voice died in his throat as Elijah Carter took a step forward. "I believe my son asked you a question," Elijah said, his voice low and deliberate. The cameras were still rolling. The entire neighborhood was watching. Riggs felt like the walls were closing in. I made a mistake," he forced out. "It was a misunderstanding." Jordan scoffed. "A misunderstanding? You threw me in cuffs because of the color of my skin." Elijah's eyes never left Riggs. "And tell me, Officer Riggs," Elijah said, voice razor sharp. "If I hadn't been here today, how would this story have ended?" Riggs had no answer. A silence hung in the air, a silence heavier than any punishment that could be handed down. The weight of Elijah Carter's question hung in the air, suffocating, unanswerable. Riggs had spent years thinking he was untouchable. But now, under the piercing gaze of the district attorney, with cameras recording and his captain's fury still ringing in his ear, he felt small. Jamal and Jordan stood side by side, no longer just 2 high school students. They were witnesses to his downfall. "I asked you a question, Officer Riggs," Elijah said again, his voice dangerously calm. If I weren't here today, what would have happened to my sons? Riggs couldn't answer, because the truth was ugly. The truth was that this happened all the time, to kids without powerful fathers, to kids whose names never made the news. I was just doing my job, Riggs muttered. But even he didn't believe it. Elijah let out a slow, disappointed breath. Your job, he repeated. Your job is to protect and serve, officer, not to profile and harass. But you made a choice today. You saw two black boys in a nice car, and you didn't see students. You didn't see young men. You saw criminals, and you acted on that choice. The black SUV's doors opened again. This time Chief Anderson, the head of the local police department, stepped out, his face twisted in frustration. Riggs, in my office, now. Riggs flinched. He gave one last glance toward the Carter twins before turning on his heels and heading toward his patrol car. Inside the precinct, Chief Anderson didn't waste time. He threw a file onto his desk, Riggs' personnel record. Do you have any idea how bad this is? Anderson barked. This isn't just another complaint, Riggs. This isn't some minor incident we can sweep under the rug. You just detained the DOE's sons, on camera, without cause. Riggs sat stiffly, trying to compose himself. Sir, I didn't know who they were. That's the problem, Anderson snapped. It shouldn't matter who they were. Whether they were Carter's sons or some kid from the projects, you didn't even stop to consider that you were wrong. Riggs swallowed. Am I fired? Anderson studied him for a long moment before shaking his head. Number the DA. He doesn't want you fired. Riggs blinked in surprise. What? He thinks firing you lets you off too easy. No, he wants something else. Anderson leaned forward, folding his hands together. You're being reassigned. Effective immediately, you'll be working in the 9th District Community Engagement Program. 6 months of outreach, patrolling a predominantly black neighborhood, and you will be directly involved in youth mentorship programs. Understood? Riggs's stomach dropped. Sir, come on. You're sending me to... I am sending you to the community you just disrespected. Anderson interrupted. If you think you're too good for it, hand me your badge now. Silence. Riggs gritted his teeth, but he knew he had no choice. The 9th District precinct felt different the moment Riggs stepped inside. Officers of all backgrounds were engaged in conversation with community members. There was no stiff, distant authority. This place operated on trust. And Riggs? He had none. As he walked in, heads turned. He caught whispers from other officers. That's the one who arrested the Carter twins. What the hell is he doing here? At the front desk, a tall black officer with graying temples watched him approach. Sergeant Thomas King. Riggs had heard of him. 20 years in the force, respected by both cops and the community. Officer Riggs, King greeted, his tone unreadable. Welcome to the 9th. Riggs forced a nod. Sir. King gestured for him to follow. You and I are going to be working together, King said as they walked. You'll be on community patrol, engagement programs, and youth mentorship. With all due respect, Sergeant, I don't think... Stop. King turned, leveling a hard stare at him. I don't care what you think. You made your bed, and now you're going to lie in it. Riggs bit his tongue. Now, let's get one thing straight, King continued. I've spent 2 decades earning the trust of this community. I won't let you undo that. I will be watching you. Every move you make, every word you say. One mistake, and you're gone. King let the silence settle before turning back toward the precinct hall. Now, come on. Time to meet the people you're going to serve. As Riggs followed, He felt something he hadn't in a long time: fear. And for the first time in his career, he realized how it felt to be on the other side of the badge. The first few weeks in the Ninth District were brutal. Riggs was an outsider, and everyone knew it. Community members ignored him, shop owners refused to make eye contact, and even fellow officers kept their distance. Every step he took felt like walking through enemy territory. Except this time, he was the one unwelcome. One afternoon, while patrolling with Sergeant King, they passed a basketball court where local teens played. As soon as Riggs approached, the game stopped. The players turned away, grabbing their things. "We don't talk to cops," one of them muttered. Riggs sighed, frustrated but unsurprised. "This is a joke," he muttered to King. King folded his arms. "No, Riggs. This is what you created?" Riggs looked around, faces filled with distrust, kids keeping their distance. He had been the reason they feared the police. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, for the first time questioning himself. Had he really spent years on the wrong side of justice? As the days passed, he started listening instead of speaking, watching instead of assuming. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to change. This story is more than just a fictional encounter. It reflects a harsh reality that many people face daily. It forces us to ask, how often do we judge others based on appearances? How many times do we let bias shape our decisions before even knowing the full truth? One key takeaway is the power of perspective. Officer Riggs believed he was enforcing the law, but in reality, he was acting on prejudice. It wasn't until he experienced discrimination firsthand that he understood how damaging it was. For those in positions of power, whether police officers, employers, or educators, this story serves as a reminder of responsibility. Prejudice, unchecked, leads to harmful consequences, and it's up to each of us to challenge our own biases before they define our actions. For communities, this story highlights the importance of holding authority accountable. Without Elijah Carter's presence, how differently would this have ended? Change happens when people speak up and demand justice. Most importantly, Riggs' journey shows that change is possible, but only through action. Acknowledging bias is the first step, but real transformation comes from listening, learning, and choosing to do better every single day. Today's story isn't just about prejudice and justice. It challenges us to ask, can people truly change? Officer Riggs only recognized his wrongdoing when he was put in the same position as those he had unfairly judged. But was his change genuine, or was it just forced upon him by the circumstances? If you were in Riggs's shoes, what would you do? 1. Accept your mistakes, make an effort to change, and rebuild trust with the community. 2. Hold on to your prejudices, believing that you weren't wrong and were just doing your job. Drop a 1 or 2 in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more thought-provoking stories. Blast off!